I never thought I'd be the kind of person who memorizes the sound of someone else's breathing, but there I was, lying in my bunk at 2 in the morning, listening to Cassian strum his guitar in the darkness below me. We'd been roommates for 3 months at this point, randomly assigned to share a cramped dorm room at Berkeley, and I'd gotten used to his late-night practice sessions. What I hadn't gotten used to was the way my chest tightened every time he started playing something new. That particular night, he was working on a melody I'd never heard before. It was soft and hesitant, like he was trying to coax something fragile into existence. He kept stopping and starting, repeating the same progression of chords until they sounded exactly right. Then he started humming, and I felt every hair on my arm stand up. I should mention that I'd never questioned my sexuality before meeting Cassian. I'd dated girls in high school, had a girlfriend for most of senior year. It wasn't that I was repressed or in denial. I just genuinely thought I was straight. But then I met this guy, with his mess of dark curls and his habit of biting his lower lip when he was concentrating, and suddenly I was lying awake at night, analyzing every interaction we'd had that day, trying to figure out why my heart raced when he smiled at me. The humming turned into words, quiet and almost whispered. I couldn't make out most of them, but I caught fragments. Something about hands and sunrise and the way someone laughs. My mind immediately started spinning, trying to figure out who he was writing about. There was Maya from his music theory class, who always seemed to find excuses to talk to him. Or Jordan, the barista at the coffee shop where we studied, who definitely flirted with him every time we went in. The thought of Cassian being interested in someone else created this hollow feeling in my stomach that I absolutely did not want to examine too closely. He stopped playing abruptly, and I heard him set the guitar down. Then his voice came through the darkness, casual and warm. "You awake up there, Marcus?" I'd been caught. I thought about pretending to be asleep, but we'd developed this honesty between us over the past few months. "Yeah, that was beautiful. New song?" "Just messing around." There was a pause, and I heard him shifting in his bunk. "Can't sleep." "Your playing doesn't bother me if that's what you're worried about." That's not what I asked. This was typical Cassian. He had this way of seeing through whatever surface answer you gave him and pushing gently for the truth underneath. It was one of the things I'd come to both love and fear about him. "Just thinking," I said. "About?" "Nothing important." Another pause. Then, "Liar." I smiled in the darkness despite myself. "What makes you so sure?" "Because you get quiet when you're really thinking about something. And you've been quiet a lot lately." Had he been paying that much attention to me? The thought sent a warm rush through my chest that I tried to ignore. Maybe I'm just becoming a more contemplative person. "Marcus, last week you spent 20 minutes debating whether a hot dog is a sandwich. Contemplative isn't the word I'd use." I laughed, and I heard him laugh too, and for a moment the darkness felt less heavy. This was the thing about Cassian. He could make me feel completely exposed and entirely comfortable at the same time. "So who's the song about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. The silence that followed was different, weighted. "What makes you think it's about someone?" "Come on, songs like that are always about someone." "Maybe I'm just becoming a more contemplative songwriter." I snorted. "Touché." "It's late," he said finally. "We should sleep." And just like that, the conversation was over. I lay there in the darkness, listening to his breathing even out, and wondered why he'd dodged the question, wondered who had inspired that melody, wondered why it mattered so much to me. The next morning, I woke up to find Cassian already gone, which was unusual. He was not a morning person. His bunk was made, though, which was even more unusual. Cassian's approach to bed-making could best be described as theoretical. He believed in the concept but rarely practiced it. I found a note on my desk in his messy handwriting. "Gone to practice rooms. Coffee on your desk. Don't forget we're meeting Theo and James for lunch." The coffee was from Jordan's shop. My usual order, still warm. He must have gotten up early specifically to get it for me. I sat there holding the cup, trying not to read too much into the gesture. Cassian was thoughtful. He did things like this. It didn't mean anything. Except I wanted it to mean something, and that realization hit me like cold water. I sat down on his bunk, still holding the coffee, and forced myself to really examine what had been building inside me for months. I thought about the way my day felt incomplete if we didn't eat at least one meal together. The way I found excuses to touch him, a hand on his shoulder, bumping his knee under the table. The way I'd started dressing a little better, wondering if he'd notice. The way my stomach dropped every time he mentioned someone he might be interested in. I was falling for my roommate. Or maybe I'd already fallen and was just now admitting it. The problem was, I had no idea if Cassian was even into guys. He'd never mentioned dating anyone, never talked about his type, never gave any indication either way. And now he was writing love songs about someone, and I was going to have to watch him fall for whoever that person was while pretending I was fine with it. I met up with Cassian, Theo, and James at the dining hall for lunch. Theo and James had been dating since freshman year and had that comfortable couple energy that made everyone around them feel simultaneously warm and lonely. They were good friends, though, the kind of people who made you feel included rather than like a third wheel. "So Cassian tells us you've been keeping him up at night," Theo said with a grin as I sat down. I nearly choked on my water. "What?" Cassian kicked Theo under the table. "I said you've been staying up late studying. Don't be weird about it." "I'm not being weird. You're being weird." Theo looked between us with knowing eyes. "The energy at this table is very weird right now." James put a hand on Theo's arm. "Leave them alone." "I'm just saying, there's clearly something." "Theo." James's voice was gentle but firm, and Theo subsided, though he kept looking at us with that same knowing expression. The conversation moved on to safer topics. James was stressed about his composition assignment. Theo was convinced their music history professor was actually a vampire because no one should be that pale. Cassian was mostly quiet, pushing food around his plate. "You okay?" I asked him quietly, while Theo and James were debating the vampire theory. He looked up at me, and for a second, there was something vulnerable in his expression. "Yeah, just tired. The song keeping you up?" "Something like that." "You'll figure it out. You always do." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Thanks." After lunch, Cassian said he was going back to the practice rooms. I had a free afternoon, so I decided to go to the library and actually get some work done. I was an audio production major, not a performer like Cassian, but I still had plenty of assignments to keep me busy. I was deep into editing a project when someone slid into the chair across from me. Jordan, the barista. We'd become friendly over the semester, mostly through proximity and caffeine dependency. "Hey, Marcus, studying hard?" "Hardly studying," I said, pulling off my headphones. "What's up?" "I wanted to ask you something." Jordan leaned forward, lowering their voice. "It's about Cassian." My stomach tightened. "Okay. Is he seeing anyone?" There it was. The question I'd been dreading without knowing I was dreading it. "Not that I know of." "Why?" Jordan smiled, looking almost shy. "I think he's really interesting. And cute. Very cute. I was thinking of asking him out, but I wanted to check with you first. You're his roommate. You'd know if he was into guys, right?" I should have just said I didn't know. Should have been neutral and friendly and supportive. Instead, I found myself saying, "He's working on a song for someone. Might already be interested in somebody." "Oh." Jordan's face fell. "Do you know who?" He wouldn't tell me. That's kind of romantic, though. Secret crush inspiring secret songs. Jordan stood up. "Well, thanks for the heads up. Let me know if the situation changes." I nodded, feeling like the worst person alive. After Jordan left, I sat there staring at my computer screen without seeing it. What was I doing? Cock-blocking my roommate because I had feelings I couldn't act on? That was pathetic. I packed up my stuff and headed back to the dorm, planning to apologize to Cassian for being weird at lunch. But when I opened the door, I found him sitting on his bunk with his guitar, and he looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Hey," I said carefully. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're clearly not fine." He set the guitar aside. "It's stupid." I sat down next to him, our shoulders touching. "Try me." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What if you wrote a song for someone and you knew they'd never feel the same way? Would you still want them to hear it?" My heart was pounding. "Is that what's going on? You wrote that song for someone who doesn't feel the same way?" "I don't know how they feel. That's the problem." He looked at me, and his eyes were so dark and sad. I'm too scared to find out. I wanted to ask who it was. Wanted to tell him that anyone would be lucky to have a song written about them by him. Wanted to say a lot of things that I couldn't say. Instead, I just sat there like an idiot, trying to figure out what to do with my hands. "Maybe you should tell them anyway," I said finally, "even if you're scared." That's easy to say when it's not your heart on the line. Who says my heart isn't on the line? The words were out before I could stop them, and we both froze. Cassian turned to look at me fully, his expression unreadable. "What do you mean?" I could have backtracked, could have laughed it off, made a joke, changed the subject. But I was so tired of pretending I didn't feel what I felt. "I mean that watching you write love songs for someone else is kind of killing me." His eyes widened. "Marcus, forget it." I shouldn't have said anything. I started to stand up, but he grabbed my wrist. Don't run away." His hand was warm on my skin. "How long?" "How long what?" "How long have you felt like this?" I sat back down, not quite looking at him. "I don't know. A while. Maybe since the beginning. I didn't realize it at first. Thought I was just really invested in our friendship. Then I started noticing things, like how I'd wait for you to get back to the room, or how I'd find excuses to hang out even when I had work to do, or how the best part of my day was always the time I spent with you." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you're my roommate, and I didn't want to make things weird. Because I didn't even know if you were into guys. Because I was scared." I finally looked at him. "And then you started writing that song, and I figured it was for someone else, and I couldn't keep pretending anymore." Cassian was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then, very quietly, he said, "You're an idiot." "Wow, thanks. That's really... The song is about you, Marcus." The world seemed to stop. "What?" "The song. It's about you. It's always been about you." He laughed, but it sounded slightly hysterical. "I've been losing my mind trying to figure out how to tell you. Staying up all night working on it because I thought maybe if I could just get the words right, I could make you understand how I feel. And you've been here the whole time thinking it was about someone else. But you wouldn't tell me who it was for. Because it was for you. How was I supposed to say that? Hey, roommate, this song is about how I've been falling for you since the day we met. Hope that's not weird." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation, the relief flooding through me, the fact that we'd both been pining for each other like idiots. Cassian started laughing too, and then we were both just sitting there on his bunk, laughing like maniacs. "We're really bad at this," I said when I could breathe again. "The worst," he agreed. We'd stopped laughing, but we were still sitting close, looking at each other. I became very aware of how near he was, how I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, how his lips were slightly parted. "Can I kiss you?" The words came out barely above a whisper. "I thought you'd never ask." I closed the distance between us, and the moment our lips met, everything else fell away. It was soft and tentative at first, both of us learning the shape of something new. Then Cassian's hand came up to cup the back of my neck, and I felt him smile against my mouth, and the kiss deepened into something that made my whole body feel like it was made of light. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. Cassian rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that for so long," he murmured. "Me too. We could have been doing this for months. We're doing it now. That's what matters." He kissed me again, slower this time, and I felt something settle in my chest. Something that felt like coming home. We spent the rest of the afternoon on his bunk, talking and kissing and making up for lost time. He told me about the first time he realized he liked me, which was apparently the second week of school when I'd stayed up all night helping him with an arrangement that was due the next day. I told him about the moment I knew, which was when he'd brought me soup when I was sick and sat with me watching terrible movies instead of going to a party he'd been excited about. "Jordan asked me about you today," I admitted. "Wanted to know if you were single. What did you tell them?" "That you were writing a song for someone. I may have been trying to sabotage your love life." He grinned. "Jealous?" "Extremely." "Good." He kissed my nose. "I like you jealous. Don't get used to it. Now that I know you're mine, I'm going to be insufferably confident." "You're mine?" His eyes were soft. "If you want me to be." "Marcus, I've wanted you to be mine since the day you walked into this room with that ridiculous amount of audio equipment and started explaining the difference between condenser and dynamic microphones like it was the most important thing in the world." "It is important. I know. That's why I like you." As evening fell, we ordered pizza and ate it sitting on his bunk, which had somehow become our space now. Everything felt different and exactly the same. We were still Marcus and Cassian, still roommates, still friends, but now there was this new dimension to us, this understanding that we were choosing each other. "Will you play me the song?" I asked. "The one you wrote?" He looked nervous. "It's not finished." "I don't care." He picked up his guitar, took a deep breath, and started playing. It was the same melody I'd heard him working on the night before, but now there were words, and they were about me, about the way I hummed when I was editing audio, about my hands and how he wanted to hold them, about sunrise through our dorm window and how he'd watch me sleep sometimes and feel his chest ache with wanting. By the time he finished, I was crying. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when something is so beautiful and true that your body doesn't know what else to do with the feeling. "That was perfect," I managed. "You're perfect," he said, setting the guitar aside and pulling me close. We fell asleep like that, tangled together in his narrow bunk, and for the first time in months, I slept through the whole night. The next few weeks were a blur of happiness. We told Theo and James, who claimed they'd known all along and demanded to know why we'd taken so long. We didn't tell everyone, not yet. We wanted to keep this thing between us precious and private for a while longer. We learned each other's bodies and rhythms, learned that Cassian liked to be held while he fell asleep and that I was most affectionate in the early morning, learned how to kiss quietly so we wouldn't scandalize our neighbors, learned that love wasn't always the dramatic, earth-shattering thing movies made it out to be. Sometimes it was just choosing to make coffee for someone. Sometimes it was listening to them practice the same measure 50 times without complaint. Sometimes it was just being there. Cassian finished the song and played it at an open mic night. He introduced it by saying it was for someone special, and he looked right at me when he sang it, and I didn't care who knew. Let them see. Let them know that this beautiful person with his guitar and his messy hair and his way of seeing right through me had chosen me back. After the performance, we walked back to our dorm through the cold November night, our hands linked together in my coat pocket. "I'm glad you heard me playing that night," Cassian said. "I'm glad you wouldn't tell me who it was for. The mystery made me crazy enough to finally admit how I felt. We're really bad at communication. We'll get better. Promise." I stopped walking and turned to face him, taking both his hands in mine. I promise. No more secrets, no more pretending. Just us, figuring it out together. He kissed me there on the sidewalk, and I didn't care who saw. This was my person, my bunkmate who wrote songs, my best friend who I got to kiss now, my beginning of something I hadn't known I was looking for. We went back to our little dorm room, to our bunks that we rarely slept separately in anymore, to our shared life that had somehow become more than either of us had expected. And as I fell asleep with Cassian's heartbeat steady under my ear, I thought about all the things I'd learned over the past few months. I'd learned that love doesn't always announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it sneaks up on you in the sound of guitar strings at midnight. Sometimes it's in the way someone remembers your coffee order. Sometimes it's in the courage to say the scary thing, to risk everything for the possibility of something real. I'd learned that you can't always control who you fall for, or when, or how. But you can control what you do about it. You can choose honesty over fear. You can choose to show up even when it's terrifying. You can choose to love someone out loud. And I'd learned that the best stories, the ones worth telling, are the ones where you almost miss it, where you almost let fear win. But then you don't. Then you take the leap. Then you discover that the person you've been looking for was there all along, sleeping in the bunk below yours, writing songs in the darkness, waiting for you to finally see them. Cassian stirred in his sleep, tightening his arm around me, and I smiled into the darkness. This was my life now, this beautiful, unexpected, perfect life. And it had all started with a song he wouldn't tell me about, written for someone he was too scared to name. I was so glad that someone was me.